Hi, 你好, Lei Hong. Do you recognize what these three languages are? In fact, they are the major languages used in Hong Kong. So, in today's presentation, I'm going to talk about the language development of these three major languages in Hong Kong. As the majority of the population in Hong Kong are descendants of migrants from China's Canton province, the vast majority speak Cantonese, and Cantonese is also regarded as the mother tongue of the city. For Mandarin and English, they are the second languages. Therefore, the percentage of speaker is far more less than Cantonese. In Hong Kong, we can separate into three major linguistic groups. The first one is Hong Kong citizen. The second one is foreign resident. The third one is ethnic minorities. For the first group, Hong Kong citizen, they are the locals who grow up receiving local education and cultures. Therefore, they usually are trilingual speakers speaking Cantonese, English, and Putonghua. For the second group, it's foreign resident, which English is the major communication language within this group. The English varieties include American, Australian, Indian, Singaporean English. The last one is ethnic minorities that composed of bilingual speakers of English and South Asia languages. After hearing all the grouping and statistics, you may wonder how come Hong Kong will have this kind of language situation. Therefore, the objectives of this presentation is to understand the language situation based on the past and present language planning and policy. Also, we'll explore the proficiency and usage of the major languages, which is Cantonese, Putonghua, and English. At last, we will explore the use of minority languages in the city. First, we will take a look of the language planning and policy during the colonial period, which is before 1997. Then we will take a look of the language planning and policy after 1997, which is the past colonial period, a post-colonial period. At last, we will talk about the ethnic minority languages in Hong Kong. Before we start, we need to have a clear definition of the language policy and language planning. They are often used in an overlapping fashion and people usually mix them up. These two concepts comes with numerous interpretations, but in this presentation, I will define language policy as an action that follows with the implementation of laws, regulations, or rules. As for language planning, it's the preparations before making those laws, regulations, and rules. In this section, we will dive into the language policy and planning during colonial period. One thing we need to bear in mind is that as Hong Kong used to be a British colony for 100 years, therefore, all the policy making was in favor of British interests. For language planning, there was absence of documented report. However, there were language policies made under colonial government. Looking at the timeline of language policy of Hong Kong, 1974 will be the turning point in Hong Kong language development. Before that year, English was the sole official language from 19th century to 20th century. The implementation of the Official Language Ordinance in 1974 established that Chinese and English would enjoy equality of use. That means Chinese was recognized as a co-official language in the territory finally. In 1995, the Hong Kong government introduced the two ideas, biliterate and trilingual. Biliterate means English and Chinese languages. Trilinguals means speaking in English, Cantonese, and Putonghua. This official policy statement is still enforced up till this day. As with colonial transition elsewhere, the language patterns in Hong Kong have changed with the return of sovereignty to China from the British colony. In the post-colonial period, most of the policy and practice are the extension of those made in colonial time. However, one different changes in the language planning after the handover is that the government start to collect public opinion before making any policies. We can see from the basic law there are in 1997, the Basic Law, there are two articles that address language development, one being the continuous acknowledgement of illiterate in English and Chinese. The second one is Hong Kong government independent decision on language education and language planning. In 2002, Education Committee clearly stated that all language policy making was in regard to the illiterate and trilingual aspects of the city. But the role and status of English. English is still considered with a prestige existed in Hong Kong. People usually associate to higher education, higher social status, or even intelligence if you know English. From the 1960s until 1997, the language was used as a major medium of instruction in 90% of secondary schools in Hong Kong. Although its role as medium of instruction was replaced by local languages such as Cantonese after 1997. However, right now after 1997, English became a compulsory subject in all schools for all levels. English therefore still functions as a gatekeeper to higher education and better life chances up till the present. As Hong Kong positions itself as the international cosmopolitan city, English is not just a relic of the colonial past or not an international commerce, but a fatal marker of two systems that differentiates Hong Kong from other cities of the China. In the role and status of Chinese, Hong Kong writes according to modern standard Chinese and in traditional Chinese character, while in terms of speaking, we speak in Cantonese. Not Cantonese is not only is frequently used in daily life, it's also the regional culture and identity building component. For me, as someone who is born and raised in Hong Kong, Cantonese is the language that I associate my identity as a Hong Konger. After a political hangover, Putonghua has become another commonly heard Chinese language in the streets of Hong Kong. As a result of increasing China influence in the city, Hong Kong government beginning to promote Putonghua, such as making it as one of the compulsory subjects from primary 1 to Form 3. One controversial issue that is worth our attention is the government policy of making Putonghua as the medium of instructions in schools. Proposed in 2003 and implemented in 2008, this policy aims to improve student language ability in Putonghua. At present, attempts to extend Putonghua to teach Chinese within the public school have achieved only limited success. However, the public still have a fear of this language policy, as they believe that is a gradual attempt of the government to replace Cantonese with Putonghua. Another worry is that there is always the possibility that in an alternative political climate, the government may attempt to implement this policy more strictly. Although the Chinese group remains dominant, the presence of other ethnic groups such as Filipinos, Indonesian, Indians, ensures a degree of ethnic diversity and suggests additional areas of multilingualism in Hong Kong. To conclude, Chinese language, especially spoken language, which is Cantonese, remain dominant as it is spoken by majority of the population, and its importance in Hong Kong society is further reinforced even after the hangover from British to China. For English language, despite its association with colonialism, it will probably retain its place so as long as it is perceived to have a high exchange value locally and globally. For Putonghua may well be ascribed both a high exchange value because of its economic development, because of the China's economic development and its place in worldwide. Also, Putonghua is also the cultural integration with after the cultural reintegration with China. Hong Kong people become more encouraged and have more exposure to these national languages. These are the reference I take for this presentation. Thank you.